Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Basketball PH podcast. Enjoy the show.
What is up mga paps? Again, welcome to the Fantasy Basketball PH podcast, and this is your Fantasy Papi, Papi Roy in the house. Sa wakas, nakapag-record din tayo mga papi. This is possibly hindi ko alam kung paano ko siya ilalabas isa-isa pero this is one of the many episodes of our preview and review of all 30 teams in the NBA, reality and fantasy basketball perspective. Pero syempre, maraming focus dito yung fantasy basketball. At bakit reality din sinama natin? And it's something na i-explain natin sa bawat episode kasi definitely when you're trying to assess fantasy basketball values, players, and projections, it's based on reality. Kaya maganda din na pag-usapan natin yan. Aight. So, anong team kaya yung pag-uusapan natin mga paps? So, for this episode, we are going to talk about possibly the most most discussed, most expected team to win the championship after a big trade a couple of weeks ago. So, we're gonna talk about the Phoenix Suns, mga paps. Sa mga Phoenix Suns fans dyan, I hope you'll enjoy. I think you'll definitely enjoy yung episode natin today. At syempre, ang nagpa-special nitong episode natin na to, unang-una, medyo bagong format tayo mga paps. Bago lahat, nag-migrate tayo sa softwares na ginagamit natin, sa mga apps na ginagamit natin. And then another thing would be we're going to have a co-host. So hindi lahat ng episodes natin dun sa review natin may co-host eh. So kaya naging special to, meron tayong co-host. Ang kagandahan dito, we'll get a different perspective aside dun sa akin with regards to reviewing and creating a preview for the Phoenix Suns. So ang co-host natin is a good friend of mine. His name is Jason Almeda. Doon sa mga hindi nakakilala sa kanya, well, makikilala nyo na siya mamaya. I think for me, he's one of the, sabihin na natin na tagong ginto, yung hidden gems in for the future of the Philippine broadcasting scene and maybe international. So ito, ang kagandahan niyan, pag-uusapan natin yung mga bagay-bagay na pinagkakaabalahan ni Papi Jason. And then also, background niya, paano siya napunta sa sports, bakit bakit napili niya itong Phoenix Suns kasi he was actually contacting my friends din trying to ask ano ba yung mga favorite niyong team so I could ask certain guest. And ito na nga, andito na, Papi Jason Almeda in the house. What's up, bro?
All right, good day sa inyo mga ka-Fantasy Papi and sa'yo of course, Papi Roy. I'm happy to be on your show and we've got a great one for the audience today because we're going to be discussing the highlight of the trade deadline, ang Phoenix Suns na with their newly acquired superstar si Kevin Durant and their outlook for the rest of the season. Papi Roy, how are we going take the lead? How are we going to do this?
Ayun, maraming salamat, Paps. Ayun. Sabi ko nga this is an episode na may special flavor kasi hindi lahat ng 30 team preview review na gagawin natin merong special guest. Kaya ito, inintroduce nga kita kanina, possibly one of the hidden gems of the Philippine broadcasting. Very soon maybe international. So maybe hindi, I'm pretty sure na hindi lahat kilala ka. So let's give an introduction, Paps. Una, siguro let's lead by introducing yourself, anything about you, and then also answering the question. Well, let's talk about your fantasy basketball story, and then also your favorites in terms of NBA.
Okay, so ayun, masusurprise na lang kayo at yung last question. But quick intro about myself. So I'm Jason Almeda. Ayun, or you can refer to me as my alias Jason Pressman. So I'm going to be this is my freelance basically. I'll be under pressman.sports@gmail.com. Ayun, I'm an aspiring sports broadcaster and beat writer. Hopefully, ayun, around the scene here in the Philippines or in the US. Yeah, if you like what you hear from me today and you want talent for sports broadcasting, you can reach me right there in the email that's displayed in my name, pressman.sports@gmail.com. Yeah, so I'm going to be reviewing the Phoenix Suns for you guys. Little bit of history about me sa fantasy sports naman. I actually started pretty late. I started in my friend's fantasy league with his family, just a bunch of dudes, his uncles. We did a small 10-team league as my intro. Actually, nag-champion ako dun kahit sobrang wala akong alam nun. And one of my first, fun fact, one of my first trades, I was in like the 2017 season, na mispick ako, yung first pick ko with the 10th pick in a 10-man draft was, in a 10-team draft rather, was si Rudy Gobert, and I got made fun of so much for it kasi John Wall was available back when we didn't know his injury history. Ayun, I got made fun of it so much, I traded him for LaMarcus Aldridge the season when Kawhi was out. Somehow, I still ended up winning that fantasy season. So, champion ako doon and nag-champion din ako last year. Tapos, mas surprise na lang kayo kasi, ayun, I'm going to be doing the preview for the Phoenix Suns today. But the background is, as long as I've been watching the NBA since I was like 10 years old, 11 years old, I've been a fan of yung dating New Jersey Nets. So it's going to be, I'm going to be talking about the team that basically, took probably the best player in the franchise history of the Brooklyn Nets and probably the New Jersey Nets as well. And I'm going to be breaking it down for you guys. So yeah, I'll be holding back my tears, pero we're going to be having a fun time here. Tawa din kami. And yeah, we're just gonna have fun. We're gonna be talking about basketball here today, and I'm happy to be joining you on your show today, Papi Roy.
Of course, of course, of course. Ito pala ito palang pag-uusapan natin din, Paps. Na-realize ko since nabanggit mo yung old school team ng Brooklyn Nets. New Jersey Nets. Sino yung favorite mong New Jersey Nets player before?
Funny enough, I used to get made fun of him being my favorite player, pero now he's probably one of the more annoying or more entertaining broadcasters. Could be both. Dating si Richard Jefferson, like legit fan ako nun back in the days na siya ni Vince Carter. And he had more finals appearances than Vince Carter kasi funny enough, that was a very hyped team when si Carter came in. I was just a child nun. I was just more of a casual fan. But si Richard Jefferson was there for the two finals appearances ng Nets against the Spurs and the Lakers. And yun, siya yung favorite player ko nun kasi as a kid, mas na-attract ka sa high-flying, dunking kinds of dudes versus yung di mo nakita yung all-NBA intangible value ni Jason Kidd at the time and yung na-value na yung triple-doubles na nagagawa niya na if you're playing fantasy at the time was very valuable until the proliferation of triple-doubles after the Westbrook age and here in our modern statistics age.
True, true. Naalala ko yung Richard Jefferson era. Actually, he's one of the very underrated and undervalued player. For me. Sobrang legit yan. Mga kabatch niya doon, I remember sina Kerry Kittle, sina Kit Van Horn,
Yes.
right? Diba? Di mo limutan kasi yung favorite player ko si Tim Duncan eh. Kasunudan yan si kabatch yan si Kit Van Horn. I started collecting tawag dito NBA cards noon. Nalilito pa yung tao who's higher upside, Kit Van Horn or Tim Duncan. So, yan, naalala natin yan. Pero syempre, we're going to talk about Phoenix Suns for today. And then, let's have a review, Paps. Phoenix Suns. So, at least, bago mag-umpisa yung mga games, tomorrow, so doon sa mga makakapanood ngayon, we're actually recording today, few hours before doon sa resumption ng pagre-resume ng games for the NBA. So, I hope alam nyo yan. So, kailangan i-update nyo na yung mga lineups nyo. Baka mamaya napapasarap yung pagpapahinga natin, no? So, as of the moment, Phoenix Suns is number 5 in the Western Conference with 32-28 record. So, quick question, Paps, in terms of what the Phoenix Suns has had accomplished at least until today. What how would you grade them? Given that few seasons back, they almost had it. The CP3 Devin Booker tandem almost had it until Giannis happened. Sa palagay mo ba, were you happy with their performance at least as of the moment?
So the thing with the Phoenix Suns that, syempre, as we know as fantasy owners, the thing that's been holding them back specifically, and for the people who have the most stuck in the Phoenix Suns success as fantasy owners, other than Mikal Bridges owners previously, is the problem with this team has been their injuries. Devin Booker and Chris Paul both have missed about 20 games. DeAndre Ayton, despite in their absence, has not quite stepped up to the plate, and Mikal Bridges has been consistent with his performance naman, but he's not exactly the superstar, or at least he wasn't until the showing that he's had recently in Brooklyn, where he's been flashing yung talagang parang all-star potential niya, na which really has the chance to shine now despite the depth in that roster. So ayun, what we're seeing from the Suns so far is actually quite surprising, na despite the injuries they encountered in the season, and despite some of the struggles that we've seen with them, they've managed to stay afloat. Devin Booker has come back. I think he's only played maybe the last 3 games, the last 5 games, and it's been looking like a minutes restriction because he's only cracked 30 minutes in their last loss to the Clippers. Somehow they're, as you said, 32-28 with 22 games remaining in the season. So trade deadline's a little later than usual. So the fact that they're within this playoff spot, where mid-season they were hovering around 10th, 11th, we were pretty afraid that they actually weren't going to make the playoffs. It's pretty decent that they're fifth. They were actually fourth before they lost to the Clippers, the team that was just below them yesterday. In the current standings, ayun, as we know, it's going to be a very tight-knit race kasi yung parity situation na yun sa West. The best example here is yung saying where the Phoenix Suns can go, kasi some of us who are buying really into the hype of that trade, and why wouldn't you? Because this is Kevin Durant that we're talking about, adding to a team that has been to the finals and was in the Western Conference Finals before Luka Doncic decided to make them part of his legacy. The Phoenix Suns are only 1.5 games away from third in the West, which is currently held by the Sacramento Kings, and they were just overtaken by the LA Clippers in fourth, that they're half a game behind. The Kings are 5-5 in their last 10. Suns are 7-3. So it's very possible that they can make the push, and it's not completely out of the picture if the Grizzlies tend to falter late in the season. Na the Suns are about 4 games away from them in the second seed. Wouldn't really count that out. The other interesting to note here is, ayun nga, parity situation in the West. 1.5 games above, they get to the third seed. They're tied with Sacramento if everything stays still. 1.5 games down, they lose just 2 games. They're in the play-in tournament. They're tied for the 7th and 8th, yung upper seeds ng play-in tournament, with the New Orleans Pelicans and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And not too far behind, yung 9.5 games behind, 3.5, sorry. Let me see it. Yeah. If they go down 3 games, they lose their next 3 games, they're actually out of the play-in, and they'll be tied with the Utah Jazz for games behind, 12.5 games behind the Nuggets. And it's concerning because not only are the teams that are out of the play-in picture right now still kind of competitive, the Utah Jazz, the Portland Trail Blazers, and the newly equipped Los Angeles Lakers, ayun, like the teams that they're already in competition with now can really shake up the standings. So at least for us fantasy owners, that's a very good thing for yung mga superstar owners of the Phoenix Suns, because it's looking like, despite the minutes restrictions coming back from injuries, it's looking like they're going to play. So the rest of the situation with the Suns is interesting fact here. So other than their schedule, the 22 games remaining, they have the sixth hardest strength of schedule per tankathon.com. So within those matchups, one will be pretty soon. They have 2 games against the Bucks, 2 games against the Nuggets, 2 games against the Sacramento Kings, who they'll be competing with for that third spot, and 2 games against the Lakers. And very exciting also to note, they only have 1 game against this team, but it's coming soon. They have the Mavs on March 6th. So makikita natin yung very exciting matchup of Kevin Durant versus Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic versus that Phoenix Suns core of Devin Booker, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton. That team that he essentially cemented as part of his legacy in that Western Conference final.
Yeah, true. To be honest, no, sinilip ko nga yung upcoming games nila. Ang makakalaban lang nila na medyo tanking mode is the Charlotte Hornets and the Orlando Magic. The rest, almost lahat ng team na nakakalaban na. Kasi the San Antonio Spurs pala. So, 3. So, ilalagay ko naman yung LA Lakers. Hindi. Huwag muna natin i-burn yung bridges.
Madami magalit dyan, Papi Roy.
Magalit si Grim. Shoutout pala kay Grim. Okay, shit para sa Lakers. Madami kasing West. So, I think, nabanggit na nga kanina ni Papi Jason, medyo siksikan talaga sa West. You can't really know. Hindi natin alam kung sino kaangat, sinong bababa. That's the reason why we have these episodes, this team reviews and previews to at least guide us on what do we expect for these teams. So with that regards, Paps, do sa current na standing nila ngayon, anyone that you're kind of like disappointed with or surprised? So let's talk about the 3 top players before the trade deadline. So let's talk about the DeAndre Aytons na nagumpisa yung season na medyo may drama-rama sa hapon. And then you also have CP3 na maybe we're kind of like really feeling that aging spectrum ng game niya, ng career niya. And then lastly, Devin Booker. Devin Booker is still really good, but for some reason, he also can't still be always healthy for the full season. These top 3 players, aside dun sa nabanggit mo na nawala na, what can you tell about these 3 players? Who do you like most na you think stepped up? Or who do you think needs to step up rather para they could actually have a better rest of the season standing?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. Actually, funny enough, the top 3 is probably no longer the top 3 with their new addition, but we'll get into that in a while. So, who I've been impressed with really is Chris Paul, despite because he's been there throughout the absence of Devin Booker. Their record without Devin Booker per StatMuse this season has been 11 and 16. So losing record pa rin, pero managing to keep afloat given their strength when their team has been together. So Chris Paul, despite for us fantasy owners, like his stats have been kind of down, his stats have still been strong where we need them. And I'll focus on the stats first. 9.1 assists per game at this current juncture, and in steals per game he's at 1.6. So these are still good, like very good to elite numbers. Yung sa assists, if I remember correctly, he's at 5th in the NBA. He's the top guy who's not averaging 10 assists per game this season, at which we have 4. And the thing with Chris Paul is you saw both his limitations and his strengths play out this season talaga in the games without Devin Booker. Yung strengths niya is he was really, you noticed it really in the first season that he was with the Suns. He made this team more than the sum of its parts. And that was extremely important given that the guy who was going to carry them in scoring at the time, Devin Booker, was out for extended periods of time. Hamstring injury, wala kang magagawa dyan. You're just gonna have to rest it, which he had to. And Chris Paul, playing big minutes in that time, maybe he didn't put up all the numbers. I think in that stretch, the highest point total he put up was 28. Pero you saw guys emerging like si Josh Okogie, yung really being able to stay in that starting lineup, providing his defense and just enough offense to get by. Si DeAndre Ayton would show flashes, although sometimes not enough. Like DeAndre Ayton's constant thing is we always want a little more from him. And if you guys were watching the game, tsaka siguro na pick up niyo sa waiver wire if you needed threes and points at the time. But diba, si Landry Shamet, nakita natin na really being unlocked by Chris Paul, pero to his credit din, doing what he was able to do, really playing above his pay grade and cashing in on his contract now na he was able to do his best Steph Curry impression and really keep them afloat during that time. So yun yung strength ni Chris Paul na that I really admired in that run na yung you saw even in the big games na playoff atmosphere na against the Nuggets and against like the the Grizzlies during that Christmas slate of games that they won, despite being shorthanded and despite the playoff atmosphere of those, you really saw the composure of the Phoenix Suns and how solid the rest of that roster is. And we're going to be talking about how that's been shaking up because, ayun nga, the core of that roster, ayun, wala na si Mikal Bridges, tsaka si Cam Johnson, and si yung dating boss man na wala naman, he wasn't playing on the Suns anyway. But yeah, we're going to talk about their significance as well. Si Booker naman, of course, you can see his absence kind of tells you just his value to this team. Yeah? Na you really do need that one scorer to tie everything together. Na it really shows na when he can't score and you've seen the Suns falter, yung natatambakan talaga sila sa ibang games na they really do need that guy to be the fulcrum of the offense for everything else to work, for their ball movement to work, for their for their just for their continuity of play and for their defenders to really shine. You do need that one guy for the defenses to focus on and to really provide you the points because as we saw in that run, that's really not something that Chris Paul or DeAndre Ayton are going to do. So, nothing but good things to say about Devin Booker, who has also been keeping up his assist rate surprisingly so far in the season. But we'll see how that progresses. Tsaka si Ayton,
Ano pala, no?
that's
Quick note kay Devin Booker. You have to mention that the Kardashian curse was lifted. I guess that's a big angle.
ayun, siguro nakita na yung bias ko doon, Papiroy, kasi sa Kardashians, masasakit yun. Like, I really hate it when that gets in my basketball. Yung Kim Kardashians, we can make kind of a comparison dito sa Philippine context natin na yung parang si Andrea Brillantes saka si Richie Rivero.
Yeah.
Yung may commotion sila. It's like, I'm here for the basketball. Ano to? So going back into our point, so the last of the what would have been called the Suns Big Three, although arguable, a lot of Suns fans would say baka si Mikal Bridges yung third guy nila. But yun, si DeAndre Ayton, what's there to be said about him? The thing with DeAndre Ayton, regardless of if you're just a fantasy basketball player, if you just enjoy the product on the court, you always want a little more from DeAndre Ayton. Palagi natin naririnig sa mga analysts ng ESPN or yung analysts ng NBA na they keep telling people na let's not focus on what DeAndre Ayton is and instead what he is. So what is DeAndre Ayton? He's at 60% from the field right now, 18.7 points per game. He averages less than a block per game, 0.7 with his career, one block per game. It's never really been his thing. He's been able to provide interior defense, but not necessarily rim protection or shot blocking. 10.5 rebounds per game, and very good free throw percentage for a big man. 75% for his career, just under 74% for the season. And as I mentioned earlier, hovering just under 60% from the field in total, playing 51 games. So his health has been a very valuable thing. But you don't really expect yung breakout games despite the absences of the other superstars. DeAndre Ayton, he doesn't really benefit from their absences. He doesn't take over their usage really. That's always been the critique with him, diba? Yung baling kahit sa shot profile niya, yung he'll get a smaller guard matched up on him tapos he'll still go to that yung short jump shot or yung short floater niya. So it's nothing new for Ayton. It's not to be too harsh, pero yung typical disappointment that comes with his expectations as a number one pick in the same draft class as Luka, and also in this, I don't think it's a hot take to say this, na championship caliber team that has been in the finals before and looks to be a perennial playoff contender.
Yeah, but pero some would actually ask us to be rather be harsh on DeAndre Ayton kasi again, what you've mentioned, he's a top caliber draftee, pero we've given him almost 5 years na to really evolve, pero hindi pa nag-evolve. siguro ang nakakainis siguro sa part ng mga fans and analysts for DeAndre Ayton is he can actually do it eh. So yung lingering question na why can't he do that? He actually had the chance to produce what? Almost 1.5 blocks in the year 2019-2020. Pero now it went back to point 0.7, 'di ba? So alam mo 'yun, especially na pag-uusapan na natin yung mga bagong changes do sa team. Maybe it's something that, we could expect as a preview for the Andre Ayton. We'll talk about it more later. Pero umpisa na natin pag-usapan yung bagong Phoenix Suns. So after the trade deadline, ito yung mga nangyari, Paps. The Phoenix Suns received Kevin Durant from your Brooklyn Nets. Also TJ Warren. Let's see kung pag-usapan din natin quickly later kung magbabubble Warren ba ulit to si TJ. Kapalit naman ni Kevin Durant and TJ Warren, Nets actually received Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson. So yun yung big names na nakuha nila. They also got Juan Pablo Voley. Hindi ko kilala kung sino to. Pero they also got the 2023 first round pick, 2025 first round pick, 2027 first round pick, and then may pick swap pa for the 2028 first round, and then they also got the 2028 second round pick from Milwaukee, 2029 first round pick from Phoenix din pala, saka 2029 second round pick for the Milwaukee. So bakit ko nabanggit yung Milwaukee? Kasi this actually is a 4-team trade. So nakisali ang Bucks dito dahil kinuha nila si Tito J. Crowder na bali-balita na is almost within his target weight for playing. So watch out for Tito J. Siguro more of like reality based impact ang mabibigay niya compared to his fantasy value. At least that's for me.
Tsaka
Maybe we get
mag-ingat yung mga Joe Ingles owners kasi may obvious overlap sa role doon.
also Pat Connaughton, si Whiteman can't jump, maapektuhan yan. It's going to be tricky kasi syempre Chris Middleton is also trying to ramp up. That goes as well with Bobby Portis. So let's see more about it mo dun sa ating preview and review for the Milwaukee Bucks. And then yung ika-apat nilang ka-trade would be the Indiana Pacers who actually got Tito George balik loob. Finally, the infamous Kawhi Leonard trade. They also got Tito Serge. Jordan Nwora, medyo surprising to kasi si Jordan Nwora is actually someone na I thought na medyo susugalan ng Milwaukee Bucks given na yung profile niya is malayanis, longer body. Compared to Giannis, he can actually shoot, pero again, that's the price you pay if you want to really win at least as soon as possible. So they also traded their 3 future second round picks. This is a trend. If you hear the second round picks, it means it's the 2023 trade deadline. And then also may cash consideration then from Brooklyn. Okay, so
yung second round picks, 'di ba? Yung bagong meta.
Oo, totoo. So with all of that said, idagdag na rin pala natin yung kanilang signing recently na si Terrence Ross dun sa roster para kompleto na sila. So with all of that said, give me your grade about this move. I-grade mo yung current roster nila plus kindly grade their new owner. Kasi I think he's trying to really make a big bang upon his new tenure.
All right. So these are exciting topics coming up. So first things first, yung grade. So I actually saw ESPN did release something about this Instagram nila nung no, sorry, that was for the Kyrie trade pala. Pero majority of the opinions I've heard around this trade so far, I actually differ from kasi I actually have the Phoenix Suns with a better grade on this than the Brooklyn Nets. So I gave the Phoenix Suns actually an A on this trade. Now, that's not discounting the significant amount of draft capital that they gave up. It's 4 unprotected first round picks, completely non-negotiable, and 1 first round pick swap sa 2028. Then, of course, who do you add to your team? You add Kevin Durant, the most seamlessly malleable and easy to fit player, and who's a championship caliber player talaga, who raises your ceiling, and they were already at that championship caliber level. You add him to your team, coming back healthy, coming back on a he was around in the MVP rankings. I'm pretty sure he was hovering at least around the top 5. Especially when he was carrying that team through that almost 22 game win streak. That was a very fun time before this very tragic time in the season for sa mga Nets fans. So yeah, I give it an A. It was widely said that they even tried not to give up Mikal Bridges in the trade, and that we'll get into that discussion later. Come on, you really have to give him up. I don't care for first round protected picks. This is Kevin Durant we're talking about. You have to give up Mikal Bridges, pero we'll see later na yung fifth man conversation na we'll see why they try to hold on to him so hard, but eventually have to give him up with yung sinasabi niyang twin na si Cameron Johnson. So overall, I give it an A for the Suns. They're some people would already pick them to go all the way to the finals in this stacked Western Conference. And let's not forget, the Warriors are still lingering. Steph Curry is to be reevaluated around next week. So it's a lot of competition, and the fact that they're even looked at as contenders na, some people would even punch them into the Western Conference Finals again or the finals right away. I'd have to give that an A talaga. You can't underscore the addition of Kevin Durant. And one more thing to note there is, unlike the Lakers, the Clippers, the Nets, they've given up 4 unprotected first round picks, but they still retain a good amount of draft capital. They still own their 2024 and 2026 first round picks, which they'll have around the time of, during the duration of the contracts of Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. So they'll be able to get them some backup there. And they own all their second round picks until 2028. So alam mo naman, that's the new meta, diba? So baka they can sign another free agent in the offseason. And there's another interesting note that I'll put there later. Pero that's in the future outlook of this team. But yeah, I'll give them an A for this trade.
Yeah, definitely agree. Lalo na ako kasi I actually look at the timelines of how organization compose their team. And if you look at the Phoenix Suns, they actually invested with that CP3 Devin Booker tandem. And then getting someone like Kevin Durant, which is technically it's in between the Devin Booker and CP3 timeline kasi medyo matanda na si CP3. It's within the plan and then how yung structure ng Phoenix Suns is actually composed. So para sa akin, it means that Phoenix Suns knows what they're doing. They actually are pretty smart sa mga move na ginawa nila. And then they also have very very good role players behind the actually lingering piece na nawala sa kanila, which is Mikal Bridges, technically in their defensive wing category or area. So pinansin ko kasi yung rotation nila, Paps. Simula nung nangyari yung trade na to, obviously hindi pa nakapaglaro si Kevin Durant. They actually played a lot of Josh Okogie and then Torrey Craig. They actually played, big minutes.
Yes.
Pero the moment that Terrence Ross came in, he actually started playing 25 minutes off the bat. And then looking at it, it seems like Torrey Craig is losing his minutes while Josh Okogie is getting more minutes. So, before natin pag-usapan yung mga big names later, you've mentioned also something about that missing factor that Mikal Bridges plays a big hole nung nawala siya. Who do you expect between Torrey Craig, Josh Okogie, and Terrence Ross would get a better or more minutes and more opportunity moving forward once Kevin Durant plays?
It was special mention din sa he should be in this conversation, although I don't think he's my pick. Sa homecoming ni TJ Warren. He spent yung first 5 or 6 seasons niya sa Phoenix Suns as a scorer really before we knew him as Bubble Warren. So ayun, that fifth man question, there's a lot to say to that. Just before I answer that question, very interesting yung nabanggit mong stat na lineup. Napansin ko din actually in that last game, yung not only si Terrence Ross pero yung starting 5 na yan of si Josh Okogie tsaka si Torrey Craig as the 4th and 5th man. If we're being pretty honest here, we can tell they're the 4th and 5th man in that lineup. So I have a stat here per cleaning the glass. So that lineup say Paul, Booker, Okogie, Craig, and Ayton, which is like a short-handed lineup right now kasi yung si Okogie is kind of undersized for that wing position. among lineups that have played over 100 possessions or more this season, yung point differential nila, despite yung Suns kind of middling but still having a winning record and a lot of this time being played, well, Devin Booker was in this lineup. Pero plus 22 sila. Plus 22 and they're in the 92nd percentile of yung net rating of lineups. So I could see some potential with this lineup. It's siguro this is the best substitute, yung Okogie Craig lineup for yung Mikal Bridges Cam Johnson lineup, which was actually just 2 spots ahead sa net rating nila. They were 13th among lineups that played 100 possessions. So very effective, and you can see that Phoenix scheme with that kind of personnel, whether it's Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson or Josh Okogie and si
Craig.
Yes, ayun, like their defensive scheme now going into the passing lanes, getting deflections and forcing turnovers is very effective for them. So ayun, getting more into that fifth man conversation, just to be direct here. So I'm actually picking si Torrey Craig as their fifth man. We've seen him fill in a lot of spot starts for this season. So the main reason I picked Torrey Craig, despite yung si Terrence Ross and his obvious, diba, si Human Torch, he can really get it going. Pero what I'm thinking at, when they're at full strength, when they actually have Kevin Durant in the lineup, it doesn't really make sense to have a third guard there, si Terrence Ross. I know he can fill in on the 3 spot, pero you don't want that guy exactly guarding yung threes of the other players, and with the potential for him to get targeted also on defense. Granted, when you take Terrence Ross out, there are other people to target on defense. Your star guards can target Ayton, like we saw with Luka in the playoffs, or si Chris Paul, yung eventually after you wear them down, when you have a player like si Alvarado, yung yung sinasabi kong parang Pinoy lang maglaro, yung steal niya from behind. Yung beses na ako na biktima din sa pickup games. So yeah, I'm picking Torrey Craig as the fifth man, mainly because of the defensive versatility that he provides. They're really going to need that guy who can switch and guard the perimeter, somewhat fill in for that Mikal Bridges role, because Kevin Durant, as much as he's very valuable on defense, especially come playoff time where he takes on more of a rebounding and rim protector or more weak side shot blocker role, he becomes more active in those stats. I don't have the numbers with me, but I could tell you from the eye test that you'll definitely see a spike in those. Torrey Craig would be that best fit defensively, and we'll likely see him close. Tsaka yung to note din, yung dating OKC Thunder, that fifth guy is going to beat us. Back when it was Westbrook and Durant and whoever yung shooting guard nila is, si Derek Fisher, Caron Butler, Dion Waiters at the time. We can definitely see Torrey Craig being that fifth guy targeted, and despite losing some minutes kay Terrence Ross, for the season he's shooting at a 40% clip, surprisingly at low volume. Mga 3 attempts per game for the season. So quite, you don't think 40% 3-point shooter when you're Torrey Craig, pero despite the absences of the people who would take the gravity of the offense and being able to kick it out to Torrey Craig for an open shot, he's still able to shoot 40% despite defenses being more able to focus on the other players with the stars gone. So he's my pick for the fifth man. Si Ross naman, it's that defensive liability that I see. I could see him in, spike starts in the middle of the game, but when Kevin Durant is there, you really don't need that extra offensive push when there's so much firepower already on that team.
Yes. And then siguro, isa sa malaking advantage of having someone like Terrence Ross is we all know how really above average defender Torrey Craig is. And then you already explained kung gaano ka-importante yung role na gagampanan niya dun sa bagong lineup ng Phoenix Suns, right? Pero I'm pretty sure that the team, every opponent that the Phoenix Suns will face, will try to really push to put the ball to Torrey Craig most of the time, kasi you don't want it with in Devin Booker's hand. You don't want it definitely with Kevin Durant and CP3. Of course, DeAndre Ayton, kapag napunta yan sa poste, it's he's more of like a big man scorer than a defender that you already explained earlier. So having Terrence Ross means the moment na hindi, alam mo yun, it's more of like executing the plays, getting the free shots, kapag nahirapan siguro makapag-convert si Torrey Craig despite that kind of like a decent 3-point percentage at least for this year, that's where Terence Ross comes in because he can actually knock down shots if that
Yes.
happens. But of course, hindi naman yan buong laro eh. They'll
Uh,
definitely need someone to really guard the opposing, superstar, like for example your nabanggit mo na si Luka Doncic. So I'll definitely agree with Torrey Craig.
uh,
Um
Tsaka one
si-
more point to say about that fifth man spot siguro. There's also potential na, with the amount of options they have there. So that fifth guy when Durant comes back could not only be si Craig tsaka si Ross, pero pwede rin si Okogie tsaka si Warren. Ayun, nabanggit mo na 'di ba? If some guy is faltering na is easily replaceable. I see that fifth spot being a really mercenary spot na ayun, if TJ Warren is really going and he's providing enough on defense, and when his minutes ramp up, you could see him also as someone who could take that fifth spot if they don't appreciate yung spark niya and his shot creation off the bench.
Exactly. Ang problema lang talaga dun sa kayang i-provide nito ni TJ Warren is reality wise we all know what he can do. But fantasy wise, medyo blanco kasi yung stat sheets when you're talking about TJ Warren. It's kind of like one shot to the moon yung nangyari dun sa bubble wherein si TJ Warren talaga na medyo nagwalwal itong si TJ Warren. Definitely mahirap mangyari yon as long as Devin Booker and Kevin Durant is, available to play for the Phoenix Suns. But then again, feeling ko ang lingering question dito is if you're in a deep league and then this four forwards is available. You have TJ Warren, you have Josh Okogie, you have Torrey Craig, and you have Terence Ross. Who would you rather pick?
So, I'm going to stick with my pick on that fifth man kasi syempre alam natin sa fantasy na we have the potential of the guy, yung what he can do, what he can't do. At the end of the day, you look at the rotation, you see what they get from a guy, and you just have to feel out his position on the rotation. So, syempre, since at this point I'm thinking si Torrey Craig is the guy to get, ayun nga, he's not exactly going to get you, some stunning numbers, but in a deep league, a consistent 7.8 points per game, which he's averaging right now, which is funny enough a career high. Saka yung 40% three-point rate, if he can keep that up, he'll maintain his rotation spot, which is, ayun, I'm not going to expect any like big spikes from this guy. He's not like a waiver wire kind of guy. He's kind of like yung last guy on the roster na you look at na, is the value over replacement player na if I pick up a guy off the waiver wire today, more valuable than having this guy na steady. Alam kong yung Phoenix Suns favorable pa yung schedule nila. I think they have like 3 games for every week at least for the rest of the season na can this waiver wire pickup really outperform this guy? So I would say siya yung somewhat hold or somewhat hold versus yung sub mo sa waiver wire. He would be my first pick. Tsaka in a points league, ito mas waiver wire pickup I wouldn't exactly hold him, pero ayun nga si Terence Ross. Kasi he can give you those sparks off the bench. You can get points from him, points and threes. Tsaka while si TJ Warren hasn't quite ramped up yet, ayun, his position looks quite stable. Tsaka medyo sexy to just have that, that scoring burst. So there's the potential for minutes with him as well. Tsaka, he's behind the both of them, pero I'm not exactly sure where he'll fit in. But from what I've seen, it's worth it to at least have Josh Okogie on your watch list. This guy as a defender, he's really, really very good, and it shows in that lineup I mentioned earlier. This guy is really within the lanes, and he's probably, I would say he's probably their best defender at this point, which is funny because how are you going to find minutes for this person? I think they're going to find some ways to integrate him to the lineup, and he is that dark horse actually for that fifth guy spot just because of that defensive versatility he brings. If he can just hit that corner three or if he can hide enough on offense, there's something to watch talaga yung si Josh Okogie. He's a really good defender, gets a lot of deflections per game, really gets in the passing lanes, and I don't have the stats with me kasi medyo advanced stat to, pero I wouldn't be surprised if his block rate on 3-point shots is among the best in the league. Yung parang what our impression was of Matisse Thybulle before he started losing minutes in that Sixers rotation.
True. Saka nakita na rin naman natin yung glimpse of his defensive potential back in the Minnesota days. It so
Yeah.
happened lang na it's not part of the system back then, providing such opportunity to someone like Joshua Cole. So, napag-usapan na natin yung mga uh, tawag dito, mga get backers, yung mga sumusuporta dito sa team na to. Maybe it's the best time to talk about Kevin Durant. Paps, what can you say about Kevin Durant's impact on the organization as well as to the players?
Okay, sige. First things first. Actually, wala to sa nabaon kong script, Papi. Pero yung sa organization, I wish I had to source the site right now, but trust me bro na lang siguro. Muna. You can go it on your own. Pero may sinabi si Kevin Durant na interesting in this introductory press con na, you know, knowing that he already signed the extension is with Phoenix for the foreseeable future to the end of the season and for the 3 seasons after until his age 37 season. Sabi niya, yeah, I can definitely see myself being part of this team to end my career. Then again, that's also what I said about Brooklyn. So, Kevin Durant, my opinion of him personally is, despite being a Brooklyn fan, you would think would have some score, no? Pero there's some nuance to what happened. So I'm very good with Kevin. I'm very good in my opinion with Kevin Durant because for most of the season, what you see with him is let's just play basketball. Yung nakakatakot lang minsan kay Kevin Durant, which I don't predict being a problem, pero we'll get into it in yung mga issues of the Phoenix Suns outside the basketball court, which actually there are a lot that might be being overshadowed by the impact of this trade and the capability of this team. Pero si Kevin Durant, minsan sinasabi ko na, when it's the season, he just wants to play basketball. And you really respect that about KD. Parang personality niya talaga, you can see it in like his tweets na, wala, basket lang tayo, yun lang yung usapan. Tapos sa off-season, basket lang tayo, pero baka gusto ko mag-basket sa ibang lugar. So yun yung short risk kay Kevin Durant, pero I don't think that will be too much of a problem sa Suns. What he brings to the table is, well, obviously, what is he right now in scoring? I think he's the 8th leading scorer in the NBA in terms of points per game, or 8th to 6th, around that range. Sorry, I didn't have the numbers on me right here. Strong rebound, strong rim protector. He actually averages more blocks per game than DeAndre Ayton. Tignan ko if mahanap ko sa notes. Ayun. So, si Durant,
That's true. Yeah. He has more
1.5
blocks.
blocks per game. And parehas yung per 36 numbers ni Kevin Durant na 1.5 blocks per 36. Well, si Ayton, yung per 36 niya is 0.9. That's 40% lower than yung kay Kevin Durant in a scare stat. And he's at 0.7 only blocks per game for this season. So another impact of Kevin Durant is it's going to be a double-edged sword here. Like obviously we can talk about his defensive versatility. Yung sa overall team analysis, they like to run a lot of Spain pick and roll. Yung where the screener for the roller, usually it's Devin Booker and Ayton. Booker will pop. They'll have the versatility to be able to do that with Kevin Durant instead, and that's just a nightmare to have. Durant popping up and Ayton rolling down. You're really not going to know where to go with the master of the pick and roll, si point guard Chris Paul, or kahit naman yung maging ball handler si Devin Booker and Kevin Durant in that situation. Then you'll have a Spanish pick and roll with Ayton, Booker, Kevin Durant. It's kind of a nightmare, especially in the playoffs where good luck guarding at least 2 of the 3 of those guys, and Ayton, when he gets a run to the basket, basically count it as 2. Like for all the criticism we've given of him, he is at least an above average to very good offensive center, especially rim rolling in that system, Chris Paul. The floor spacing, definitely easy lang. Kevin Durant has no problem deferring to score, so yung volume scoring ni Devin Booker, although we might see a bit of a drop, I don't think it's going to be too significant. Like you don't have to worry too much kasi Kevin Durant is fine with deferring to that more high volume scorer, but can still get his own very efficiently, as we know. Tapos defensively, I think this is the one that's being underscored by the impact of this trade. Obviously, we know what this team is and what Kevin Durant will add on offense. But defensively, not only is he 7 foot tall, 6'10", depending on when you ask him. He's going to provide a rebounding boost that they'll be missing. With the twins gone, si Cam J at saka si Mikal, they were getting a lot of those loose ball rebounds that DeAndre wasn't getting. And yung shot blocking niya. So it's going to affect their defense in two ways. What we see from the Phoenix Suns is they really like to play in the passing lanes, really disrupt the passes on the wings area, force you middle, and then hope that you turn over the ball, and then from there they're running. Chris Paul is going to see you coming down. Whoever gets the ball, it's an immediate outlet pass, and then some easy buckets for some points off turnovers. They're not going to have that same, si Durant, hindi kasing kulit ng he's not going to have the same happy and fast and young feet as those guys who were traded. He's not going to be able to play that exact same scheme. And whoever that fifth man is, kung si Josh Okogie or si Torrey Craig, yung mga more defensive oriented in those lineups, they're not going to be able to provide that same impact that the two forwards are getting as just one. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Monty Williams adjusts his scheme. Is he, he's already forcing the middle. Is he going to relinquish that that in the gap defense, looking for steals, looking to force turnovers, and funnel them more into DeAndre Ayton protecting at the rim, then finding a way for Kevin Durant to block some shots off the weak side. So very interesting what will happen to their defense as the impact of Kevin Durant. This team doesn't exactly lead in pace as well. So it will be interesting that they've added a Hall of Fame historical scorer. We'll see if he's not looking to push the ball. So we'll see if some scoring averages go down or if their total offensive rating goes up, because if they decide to push the pace a little more, they can definitely accommodate the scoring of KD with si Chris Paul and whoever else gets open from the gravity of those two guys being on the floor.
Yeah, true. Siguro isa doon sa mga aspeto na interesting for me is, of course, yung impact ng scoring ni Kevin Durant kay Devin Booker, kay Ayton, and kay CP3. Another thing na you haven't mentioned actually is the playmaking chores. Kasi itong napansin ko since the past few seasons, when Kevin Durant came back from the injury, actually he upped his assist.
He's at around 5.3, no?
Oo. So isa yun doon sa fantasy, magugulat ka kasi he started his career in just around 2.4 dimes, and then ang siguro season high na niya was actually this year 5.9. So actually 2018-2019 sorry, 2021-2022, which is 6.4. So this is going to be interesting kasi does it mean kaya ba tumaas tong assist na to is considering yung injury niya, maybe adjusting his game, maybe because he has someone like Kyrie who was very efficient, so mas naging effective din yung pag-provide niya ng dimes. So now he has someone like CP3 and someone like Devin Booker who probably can be called as like the mid-range kings of the NBA. So maybe he can actually do this. So para sa akin, isang angulo to na dapat nating i-monitor if he can actually stick this 5 to 6 dimes per game in his new team here in the Phoenix Suns.
So, an interesting note on that one. So, I can give some insight kasi syempre, I was watching a lot of Nets games. So, it's very impressive that he was able to average 5.3 assists, which is pretty high for, someone of his player stature na, diba? It's not a stat that you would exactly expect. Pero this shows like, why Kevin Durant sometimes falls under the radar as a top 5 pick. So, he took a lot more of the playmaking duty sa Brooklyn, especially when Ben Simmons wasn't playing, and especially dun sa broken na Steve Nash system, because him and Kyrie knew na the defenses were going to really hone on him. Tsaka they just had to kind of force their shot, kind of reminiscent to what it looked like back when Allen Iverson used to play on the Sixers. So what that really opened it up for was yung drop pass ni field goal percentage leader of the league, so Nicholas Claxton. We saw his emergence in Brooklyn, which was a very welcome thing. Kevin Durant, burrowing down the lane. Obviously, it's very easy for a guy who's 6'10", maybe I think he's 18th right now all time sa scoring. Now, when that guy is burrowing down the lane, you want to put a second man on him. The help defense is extremely aware that this is happening. And he's talked about some of his playmaking ability. Pero ayun, it took a bigger role this year. He's flashed it. And I would be very surprised if he wasn't flashing much of the same sa Phoenix. Especially with DeAndre Ayton, it opens up the floor for actually some high-low action. That because you'll have two 7-footers on the floor. DeAndre Ayton can even be the high man because he's used to receiving it at the top. He can get that short jumper, and then the gravity of Kevin Durant being down low, or vice versa, because Kevin Durant, he receives at the free throw line. Obviously, that's a money jumper, and then he can dish it down low when the defense comes up. DeAndre Ayton can get an easy dunk, and hopefully easy dunk nga yan instead of a hook shot over the opposing point guard.
Hindi natin sure.
Di ba yan? Nandyan na siya. Pero, ayan, as long as he makes it, that's what matters to the end for the numbers. Pero yeah, quite stunning na 5.3 assists. What I can say about that number, actually, if you look at, I'm pretty sure you're also on his basketball reference page right now. The one you look at right away from here is yung numbers niya sa Golden State. Because that was a case where, the ball wasn't exactly in his hands as the primary ball handler creator, the free-flowing offense that is Golden State. He was still able to average in those 3 seasons. Yung low niya is 4.8 to 5.9 assists, yung career high niya. His career high was 6.4 last season, pero yun, 5.9. It's a very good assist rate for this guy. And at no point within the last 6 seasons did he go below 0.9 blocks per game. So that's another interesting nugget sa Kevin Durant's impact on this team and what he's going to continue to do. And quick note there as well, we might see a drop in assists yung sa per 36 niya, and we should also expect, because he's coming back from injury. We finally gotten the word from Shams Charania earlier today na he will be looking to make his debut against the Charlotte Hornets on the road on March 1. Expect a minutes restriction. Siguro first week or so, the numbers will dwindle a bit, and that will probably be a good thing for, say, Devin Booker, si Chris Paul. We won't see some of that regression that we expect from having Kevin Durant in the lineup.
Yeah, talagang mapepending yung pagiging first round value ni Devin Booker, understanding that majority of the reason why Devin Booker really pushes that first round value in the first place is getting those dimes, steady points, plus maybe once in a while getting a couple of swipes pala or steals. So given na they're more of really leaning towards the championship itself, I think it's more of like really embracing their own roles, plus doing a little bit more. Either you adjust to tone down your game just to embrace your role, or adjust to do other stuff just to really make things happen. So to end up our very, very solid episode, Paps, championship Paps, would the Phoenix Suns be this year's NBA champions?
So I was dreading this question, really. Alam mo naman, this Phoenix Suns team, there's a lot of story here. There's a lot of history. Chris Paul, obviously, in his quest to really cement his legacy. It's the only thing that's missing from his future Hall of Fame resume. Si Devin Booker, na highly criticized for the longest time, na yung sinasabi nga na back when the Phoenix Suns really weren't winning anything, na at the season before they made their finals push and before they acquired Chris Paul, sinasabi nga na baka good stats, bad team guy, si Devin Booker. And we saw how that ended up. Kevin Durant, obviously, we know the narratives around him. Wasn't exactly the fan favorite when he went to the Warriors, when he went to Brooklyn, and now with the Suns, joining up a team that, if you're not exactly a fan of this team, it's not going to help, having one of the most polarizing characters in Kevin Durant on there. And then, obviously there's the critique of DeAndre Ayton na if you're a fantasy owner, baka you might even cheer against this team in the playoffs. What I would say is there's so much parity in the West. I'd say who's favored right now, it's looking like Milwaukee. And if you put the Suns back in the finals with them, if they can make it there, to be quite honest, having Kevin Durant there, if you remember that championship run ng Milwaukee, who gave them the most trouble? And even though I'm a Brooklyn fan, I think it's unfair to say this, pero di ba sinasabi nga na if Kevin Durant's foot was maybe an inch smaller, may championship na sila kahit second round lang yung matchup na yun. But at this point, if the Suns can make it to the finals and they encounter those Milwaukee Bucks, they could really take this all the way. And the favorite this whole season has been the Boston Celtics, pero they haven't been playing well lately. We'll see if they can pick it up. But yeah, putting me on the spot right here, you'd have to like their chances this season. They're really gonna go all out for it, and despite 3 years being left on Kevin Durant's contract, and at most 2 years yung kay Chris Paul, that window is closing very soon. We saw how fast it closed for the Nets. With how this team plays, with their coach, with how well-rounded they are, it's hard to count them out as a championship contender. So, putting me on the spot, gun to my head. Sige, baka Phoenix nga yung favorite natin.
There you go. Yun ang mga gusto kong hot takes eh. Yung talagang bigla ang jump shot, kumbaga. Last 3 seconds, you have to call the shots. So, Phoenix Suns for Papi, Jason. Sundutan ko lang before we actually end this episode. If you're playing fantasy basketball and week 20 is very important to you, I don't know, maybe it's the first week of your playoffs, maybe it's the second week of your playoffs, depende kung paano nyo sinet up yung liga nyo. You have to look at the Phoenix Suns schedule that week because they only play 2 games. So given that, I'm not yet sure, hopefully Kevin Durant is, super 100% by then. If you own CP3, if you own Devin Booker, or if you own Ayton, or if you own Kevin Durant, it's going to be an interesting decision if you'd rather try to trade them now, given that there's a need for you to get more games out of your top players by that week. If you ask me, it's going to be a different discussion kasi kapag ano na yung pinag-uusapan kapag playoffs na yung pinag-uusapan, it's a numbers game. Especially if Kevin Durant is still ramping up, then it's going to be a big loss for your team kapag, he's just going to pace it off. I guess if you want to be safe, fine. I would trade any of those just to be safe on that week. Pero kung hindi naman, this is just like the loophole do sa schedule nila. The rest, the 3 to 4 games, average, standard. So I'd rather stick with them. Pero ito lang, just want to highlight week 20 kasi it's going to be a big decision for the fantasy basketball GMs if that happens or if it's actually happening to you. Tapos dalawa pa yung Phoenix Suns players mo. So, it's something you need to, clutch. It's a clutch shot. Hopefully open pa yung trade nyo for you to do something about it. If not, well, that's part of the fantasy basketball league. Tawag dito, overall dynamics. Ganun talaga. It's something that you should be considering when you draft, during the whole season. So, I guess kailangan lang talaga nating ng konting adjustment depende dun sa composition ng teams nyo. Anyways, sorry. Parting words, bro.
All right. So, thank you, Papi Roy, for letting me be on your show. Hope to be back again. Had a blast. So you can find me on Jason Almeda. You can also know me as my alias as Jason Pressman. So, I'll be under pressman.sports@gmail.com. You can reach me there. If you like what you've heard from me today, you have an opportunity for me while I'm here in the Philippines, or someone sa United States na needs a sports broadcaster, venue announcer, you like my voice, you like my analysis on the game, please reach out to me on pressman.sports@gmail.com. Siguro sa next episode na nakaset up na yung portfolio ko, plan to set up an IG na with some of my experience. So, pero at the moment, you can follow me at my current IG. No, naka-private pa rin na yun. So parang ayun, special access ko yun, parang OnlyFans. Yun, you can find me on IG at Almeda World Peace. Yun, Jason Almeda at Almeda World Peace on IG. So hoping to see you guys there.
There you go, there you go. Nako, wag niyo kakalimutan niyo to si Papi Jason. Definitely hindi to yung huli na mag-guest dito si Papi Jason. Ah, ah, hindi, ako na yung magko-commit para sa kanya kahit na maging sikat na announcer, broadcaster to dun sa States. I'm pretty sure magda-drop by pa rin to, 'di ba, Paps, no?
Oh, syempre naman, Papi Roy, sa Fantasy Basketball PH. Para naman sa kababayan natin.
Yes, sir. So ayun, support Papi Jason. We'll definitely hear more from him in the upcoming weeks, months, or years. Sabi ko nga kanina sa intro ko, I really think, I personally think na he's one of the hidden gems na our Philippine broadcasting industry will definitely, would love to give opportunity and then hone for the future. Kasi syempre, shout out muna tayo na Sir Noel Zarate Masterclass PH na we're trying to make a movement in terms of the broadcasting. Kasi syempre, medyo tumatanders na sila. Of course, they can still do that. Pero they're already placing us, the graduates, the upcoming class to be prepared the moment that, opportunities come knocking in. So, let's expect more with Papi Jason. Ayun, Paps, I hope you enjoyed our episode for today. Ako, sobrang nag-enjoy ako. We get to hang out, we get to practice what we've learned together in the workshop, and then looking forward to more episodes with you, Paps.
Oh, shout out Papi Roy, shout out Sir Noel sa broadcasting workshop sa masterclass.ph. Thank you sa opportunity and thank you din sa inyo mga ka-fantasy tsaka mga papi for this opportunity to speak.
Yes, of course. If hindi pa kayo nakakapag-follow nyo lang yung ating page Fantasy Basketball Pinas or Fantasy Basketball PH. Of course, if you want to know more about fantasy basketball, punta kayo sa pinakamalaki, the biggest fantasy basketball GC in Facebook, NBA Fantasy League-PH. We're also, this episode will be also available at YouTube and Spotify under Fantasy Basketball PH. My Twitter handle is NBA Fantasy Papi. Hindi ako masyado active doon, pero mukhang magiging active na tayo. Big shoutouts to the Sports Ethos team, Dan Bestbreeze, and the whole team. I'm trying to work out to be their new host for the San Antonio Spurs Sports Ethos podcast. So hopefully makuha natin yon. At pag-uusapan natin kung paano natin makuha si Wemby, Project Wembanyama, care of Papi Roy. Yan ang ating pipilitin makuha. And Kumo, Papi Roy, I think magkakaroon tayo ng gig sa Kumo kapag playoffs na. So we usually do sort of like reviews every game ng playoffs dun sa Kumo. So ayun, maraming salamat mga Paps. I hope you like this new format. Kung hindi, just let me know. Of course, I'm open to your feedback. Hopefully, mas maganda na yung boses natin sa mga upcoming episodes. Medyo ano pa tayo out sick pa yung ating status. Anyways,
Nagre-recover din yung fallopian tube natin.
Oh, nagre-recover na yung yung mga larynx. Ayan. Maraming salamat mga papi sa mga Phoenix Suns dyan. I hope you like this episode. Sobrang detailed. I guess this is one of my favorite episodes so far kasi we get to really juice up our guest here. Alam niyo naman dito sa ating show, we really highlight the excellence of our guest. Kaya maraming salamat, Papi Jason. More episodes coming up. This is your Fantasy Papi Roy. Bye-bye.